She just had the baby and told the nurses to keep me out. That was the moment I realized I wasn't welcome anymore, not at the hospital, not in their lives. Hi, I'm Margaret. I raised my son with everything I had, and that night, the night I should have become a grandmother, I became a stranger instead. I thought it was just a misunderstanding, until she sent an email accusing me of being a danger to my own grandchild. If you've ever felt erased from your family or blamed for something you didn't do, this story is for you. Have you ever been pushed away by someone you once considered family? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. She texted me 3 times that week just to confirm I'd be at the birth. Just making sure you're still coming, Margaret, she'd written last Monday, then again Wednesday, and again on Thursday night. I smiled at the last one, even told Thomas over tea that Emily was being her usual nervous self. But as I sat in the hospital parking lot watching the spring wind rustle through the newly budding trees, a twinge of doubt crept in. She'd never needed reassurance from me before. After her miscarriage 2 years ago, she came to my apartment in tears, fell into my arms, and whispered she'd never get through another loss without me. Back then, our connection felt unshakable. But these past few months, her tone had shifted. Her texts felt formal, measured. Something in my gut stirred, but I brushed it off. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and anticipation. I clutched the small blue box in my lap, wrapped carefully with a satin ribbon, holding a handmade quilt I'd started when Emily first told us she was pregnant. Each square stitched with love, one for every month she'd carried our grandson. She didn't know I was working on it. I wanted it to be a surprise. I sent Daniel a quick text. Just arrived. In the waiting area. Hope everything's going well. No response. The hallway was quiet except for the hum of the vending machine and the occasional distant beep from heart monitors. Families whispered in the corners, nurses clicked past with purposeful strides, but no one looked my way. I'd chosen my best blouse for this night, the one with the soft floral pattern Emily once complimented. My pearls sat neatly against my collarbone, the same ones Frank gave me on our 25th anniversary. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. After 20 minutes, a nurse approached. Young, polite, professionally distant. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Mrs. Campbell?" she asked. "Yes," I stood, gift in hand, hopeful. "She wanted me to let you know. Emily says she's feeling overwhelmed. She asked that we keep visitors to a minimum for now." I blinked. "But I'm not just a visitor, I'm her—" "She says she's too anxious to have more people in the room," the nurse added, softer this time. "She asked us to keep you in the family lounge." The words landed gently, but their meaning cracked something sharp inside me. I nodded, sitting back down slowly. The nurse gave a tight, sympathetic smile and walked away. I stared at the gift in my lap. The ribbon now felt foolish, overdone. The soft folds of the fabric inside might never brush against my grandson's skin. The minutes ticked by. I watched the doors to the delivery ward, hoping Daniel would peek through, say something, anything. I thought of calling him, then imagined him pressing decline. My fingers froze before they reached for my phone. At one point, the quiet of the hallway shifted. A distant, high-pitched cry rang out, thin, desperate, full of life. The baby. My grandson had entered the world, but I was not there. I was not invited. I was not wanted. I felt the tears press behind my eyes but didn't let them fall. A woman across from me, maybe someone's sister, maybe someone's mother, glanced at me with vague curiosity. I turned away. The quilt sat heavy in my lap now. I rested both hands on it, smoothing the ribbon once more. I had imagined Emily's face lighting up when she saw it, her arms wrapping around me with gratitude. I'd pictured Daniel beaming with pride, handing me the baby and saying, "Mom, meet your grandson." Instead, I listened to the murmur of celebration muffled by 2 thick hospital doors. Another nurse passed. I straightened up, tried to catch her eye. She didn't stop. The overhead speakers announced a code blue in the East Wing. Someone's bad news. Not mine. Mine was quieter. Mine didn't merit alarms. Was I now just a guest in my own family? I had once rocked Daniel through colic, sat in every school play's front row, held Emily's hand through her grief, and tonight I waited outside like a stranger. The music in my chest, the rhythm of anticipation of joy stopped the moment I heard that cry. I wasn't allowed to hear it up close. Not really. I didn't go home right away. I sat for nearly an hour unmoving, the gift box untouched. I told myself maybe they'd call soon. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew. And I wasn't ready to ask why. The last time I felt this cold wasn't in a hospital. It was at Frank's funeral. That night, the chill had seeped into my bones, not from the January wind, but from the emptiness he left behind. Tonight was different, but the cold was just as sharp. It clung to the windows of my apartment and settled into the silence between the tick of the wall clock and the low hum of the refrigerator. I hadn't turned on the lights when I came home. The darkness suited me. The gift box still sat on the kitchen table, ribbon untouched, exactly where I'd placed it hours ago. It looked out of place now, too soft, too hopeful, too full of the woman I thought I still was. I sat in my usual chair, the one closest to the window, and held a mug of tea I hadn't taken a sip from. Steam had long stopped rising. I pressed it between my palms more for comfort than warmth. The apartment around me was quiet, too quiet for a night that was supposed to be filled with celebration. My phone buzzed once. Then again, I ignored it. It buzzed a third time. I sighed and checked the screen. Harriet, down the hall. Margaret, have you seen it? Please call me. I stared at her message, thumb hovering over the call button. I didn't want to hear concern in her voice. I didn't want pity, but curiosity won. She picked up on the first ring. Margaret? Oh, thank God. Are you home? Yes. I've been trying you for the last hour. Have you read it? Read what? She paused, hesitant. Emily's email. She sent it to everyone. After the birth. My stomach tightened. What kind of email? It's bad, Margaret. She says you caused her emotional harm, that she felt unsafe with you there, that she's cutting off contact. My heart thudded against my chest. What? She sent it to the whole church mailing list, the women's group, even the neighborhood committee, everyone you know. I swallowed, hard. Do you still have it? I forwarded it to you, but Margaret, brace yourself. A moment later, a new buzz. I opened the email with trembling fingers. Subject, a difficult truth. I must share. Dear friends and family, as many of you know, our son was born tonight. It should have been the happiest moment of our lives. But behind that joy is a painful decision I need to share. For my own well-being and for the safety of our child, I've chosen to limit contact with Margaret Campbell. This was not an easy choice, but after months of subtle manipulation, boundary crossing, and emotional pressure, I realize I can no longer allow her influence in our home. She has caused me great distress during a vulnerable time. This isn't about blame, it's about protecting my peace. I ask for your understanding and privacy as Daniel and I navigate this new chapter. Sincerely, Emily, I read it twice, then a third time. Every word struck like a slap. I could barely process the phrases. Emotional pressure, manipulation, protecting my peace. They didn't sound like Emily. They sounded like a prepared statement, something written after careful planning. What exactly did she accuse me of? And why did no one ask for my side? My first instinct was to respond, to defend myself. But to who? The neighbors? The women from church? Daniel? Where was Daniel? The last time we'd spoken, 2 days ago, he said, "We're just so grateful for you, Mom." He had held my hand, looked me in the eyes. Now, silence. The phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from Jean, head of the church outreach committee. Jean, Margaret, I'm so sorry, but under the circumstances, the board feels it's best if you take a break from committee duties for a while. Please understand, it's only temporary." Temporary. The word rang hollow, like a locked door with a sticky note that says, "Come back later." I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the quilt in half, call Daniel, march back to the hospital, demand an explanation. But I didn't. I sat still. There's something about public humiliation that teaches you how to disappear quietly. You start measuring your movements. You second-guess even your own breath. I poured the untouched tea down the sink and watched it swirl away like something I couldn't get back. Then I rinsed the mug, wiped the counter, folded the dish towel over the sink rail, rituals that grounded me when my world tilted sideways. When Frank died, I'd asked myself who I was without him. Tonight, I asked a different question. Who am I if my own family decides I'm no longer welcome? A few weeks ago, Emily sent me a framed sonogram with the note, "He already loves his grandma, Margaret." That frame still sat on the bookshelf in the hallway. I turned it face down. The apartment felt too quiet again. I turned on the radio, soft classical music, something slow and wordless. But it didn't help. I turned it off. I looked at my phone again. No new messages. Not from Daniel. Not from anyone who mattered. By dawn, I had lost my daughter-in-law, my community, and perhaps my place in my grandson's life. The gift box still sat untouched on the kitchen table. For the first time, I wondered if it would ever be opened. It was supposed to be the beginning of her story, and mine too. I had imagined Emily untying the ribbon slowly, gently peeling back the silver paper like it held something fragile, sacred. I saw her fingers trace the embossed cover, her eyes soften as she read the first page. I pictured her crying, maybe even laughing at the stories, the photos, the small handwritten notes tucked between the pages. But the gift still sat unopened on my kitchen table. 3 days had passed. The ribbon was still tied. I woke that morning to soft sunlight pushing through the blinds. The kitchen felt untouched, still wrapped in the cold tension of that night. My cup of tea sat where I'd left it, half full, cold, forgotten. I stared at it for a moment, then reached for the box. My fingers paused on the knot. A strange hesitation caught me off guard. I untied it slowly. Inside was the leather-bound journal I had spent almost a year assembling. A deep brown cover, hand-stitched edges, soft pages that smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. On the first page was my handwriting, neat and centered. To Emily, for the child who will carry the stories we've lived. I flipped through the pages. Photos of Daniel as a baby, birthday cards from Frank, ultrasound images I'd printed and glued carefully alongside quotes from old family letters. There were pages where I'd transcribed moments we shared. There was even a message from Emily, written 2 years ago, after a long conversation over wine. "You're the mother I never had." I had printed that message, trimmed the edges, and slipped it into the inside cover. But now, seeing it again, I felt nothing but distance. Frank would have known what to say. He had a way of breaking tension with simple wisdom. When people try to make you invisible, you get louder, but with kindness, he once said, brushing my hair behind my ear while I cried about a church disagreement. I could almost hear him now. I wished I could talk to him. I touched the edges of the pages again and then closed the journal softly. There was something gnawing at me, a memory I couldn't shake. Emily, 6 months ago, asking if she could use the study while the living room was being painted. "Just a quiet space to read," she'd said. She'd come and gone without much conversation. I didn't think twice about it at the time. She was family, but now that request felt too convenient. I picked up the phone and called Thomas, my nephew, the one with a mind like a calculator and a heart like his mother's. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Aunt Margaret? Hi, sweetheart. I need a favor, and it's a strange one." "Strange how? Can someone access files on my home computer without me knowing?" There was a pause. Technically, yes, especially if they have physical access. Why? Emily used my study for a few weeks, said she needed quiet. I think she went through my documents. You think she copied something? I don't know what to think, but things have been said, written, actually, that sound like me, but they're not. Thomas didn't speak for a moment. Do you want me to check your login history, remote access logs? Yes, please. I gave him access to my system. He texted me a few minutes later. Running diagnostics. Might take a bit. I waited at the table, the journal now closed beside me. The hum of the fridge was the only sound in the room. I watched the digital clock flip from 10:41 to 10:42. Then my phone buzzed again. Thomas. Auntie. Someone downloaded a series of files from your desktop folder labeled Letters to Emily. The device was called EC. My chest tightened. EC, her initials. Another message came. Also found a PDF file saved under your name, but it was edited after your last login. My hands were suddenly cold again. 10 minutes later, my email pinged. A file from Thomas. Read carefully. Pay attention to the third page. I opened it. It looked familiar. My layout, my font, even my signature on the bottom. But the words, they were wrong. In a paragraph I had written about forgiveness, someone had inserted a sentence I would never say. Some wounds fester quietly, especially when family takes too much space. Another passage referenced Emily directly. I worry she's not emotionally stable enough to raise a child. I never wrote that. I never even thought it. These were my words, my phrases, my rhythm. But bent, reshaped, quietly poisoned. I scrolled down. The third page had more edits. Whole sections moved, the tone colder, accusatory. My stomach turned. I called Thomas. Are you sure this was edited? He sighed. It has metadata tags showing changes made from a MacBook, not your device. Timestamped 2 months ago. Auntie. If this is what I think it is, you're not just being attacked. You're being rewritten. I sat in silence, one hand on the journal, the other gripping the phone. He added, You're not crazy. This is intentional, and it's careful, subtle enough to pass as yours. I blinked back something hot and sharp behind my eyes. She knew, I whispered. She knew I'd stay quiet, that I wouldn't fight back. He didn't respond right away. Then softly, So maybe now's the time you don't stay quiet. I didn't answer, but I looked again at the leather journal. She never opened the gift. But now, I wondered if it held more power than either of us had imagined. She didn't just accuse me, she rehearsed it. The thought echoed in my mind as I stood by the kitchen window, watching the rain bead down the glass. Outside, the streetlights turned every droplet into a prism. Inside, the kettle hummed quietly behind me, rising in pitch like a warning. The air smelled of lemon tea and something else, something sour and unreal. Thomas's voice crackled through the speaker. Okay, he said, typing fast enough that I could hear the keys clicking over the kettle. Got something. Your journal wasn't the only file touched. There were 2 others, draft emails, both edited on a MacBook registered to Emily's Apple ID. I didn't respond right away. He continued, She didn't just borrow your words, she rewrote you. I turned off the kettle before it screamed. And Daniel? There's no evidence he accessed anything. His phone and laptop are separate, but I don't know what he's seen or what she's shown him. I set the tea aside, untouched again. I need to talk to him. Thomas hesitated. He may not want to hear it, Auntie. Then he can choose not to, but I'm done staying silent. The rain turned steady, like fingertips on the rooftop. I packed the printouts Thomas had emailed, slid them into a manila folder, and called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was flat, tired. Hi, Mom. We need to talk in person. A pause. Okay, where? There's a cafe near you, the one with the green awnings. All right. Tomorrow? Number tonight. Another pause. Then, fine. 30 minutes? I arrived early. The cafe was warm, dim, with small table lamps casting golden circles across dark wood. I chose a booth by the window, folder beside me, hands in my lap. Daniel walked in late. He looked thinner than usual, pale under the flickering pendant light. His eyes darted across the room before landing on me. "Hi," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded. "Thanks for coming." He ordered a coffee without asking me if I wanted anything. I watched his fingers wrap around the mug like it anchored him. I leaned forward. "Do you believe I would harm your child?" He flinched slightly. "Mom, just answer." He stared down into the steam. "It's not about belief," he said slowly. "It's about timing." My heart sank. Timing? She's recovering. Hormones, sleep deprivation. Things are tense. And then you... I what? You showed up when she asked you not to. She texted me 3 times asking me to come. He hesitated. She says she never did. I reached into the folder and pulled out printed screenshots. These are the messages, time-stamped, from her number. He didn't touch them. She's saying a lot of things, Mom, that you were overbearing, that you tried to control everything during her pregnancy, that you were making her feel unsafe. I laughed, just once, low and bitter. Unsafe? Daniel, I was stitching a quilt. I was making soup. I was rubbing her back when she couldn't sleep. He looked away. She said you told her she wasn't ready to be a mother, that you planned to take the baby from her. My mouth went dry. What? She said you threatened to file for custody if she didn't let you be involved. That's a lie, I said, voice trembling, and you know it. Daniel still wouldn't look at me. She wrote it down, said you sent messages to people, that you'd been manipulating her. And you believe that? I don't know what to believe, he said softly. I slid the next page toward him. Metadata reports, download logs, the journal file with edits in red. Then believe this, I said. She faked my words, altered what I wrote. This isn't confusion. This is intent. He glanced at the papers, then back at me. Why would she do that? Maybe because I remind her of someone, or because she needed a villain in her story, or maybe because I'm too easy to erase. He blinked hard. She's not cruel, Mom. I leaned back. Not cruel, just calculated. He stood up abruptly. I can't do this right now. Then when? I don't know. When it's quieter. When things make sense again. He left the papers on the table and walked out. I sat there alone, rain tapping against the window like a question with no answer. Later that night, Harriet knocked on my door. She didn't say much, just sat with me, sipping tea in quiet solidarity. She came to the garden club last week, Harriet said finally, and told a story. Said you tried to take the baby out of her arms during a visit, that you yelled at her in front of the nurses. I stared at her. She even claimed you sent a group email saying she was unfit. I've never written such a thing. I know, Harriet said gently. That's why I'm here. We sat in silence for a while. Then I whispered, if she faked my words, who else's words has she rewritten? Harriet didn't answer, but I saw something shift in her eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or recognition. The scariest part wasn't the lie itself. It was how easily people wanted to believe it. She never opened the gift. Now it might be the only thing that opens their eyes. The sky over Westbury Lane was too blue for what I was about to do. A lazy spring breeze danced through the hedges as I stood outside the gated driveway, clutching the journal tight against my chest. Laughter floated from the backyard, soft jazz, the clink of glassware, polite conversation over hors d'oeuvres. Somewhere upstairs, a baby cried. I hadn't been invited. The Welcome Baby Caleb gathering had been arranged quietly, worded as a small celebration for close friends and family. I found out through Christine, Harriet's niece, who lived 3 blocks away and still thought I had a right to know. Frank once told me, if the truth gets buried, you dig it up with your bare hands. That morning, I dusted off the gift box, tied a new ribbon around the journal, and put on the blouse he always said made me look like springtime. When I reached the door, Harriet was already there, waiting beside a potted hydrangea, holding a glass of lemonade like a badge of neutrality. She gave me a single nod. I didn't need more than that. Inside, the house buzzed with small talk and soft strings from a Bluetooth speaker. Daniel stood near the fireplace, greeting guests with forced warmth. Emily wasn't in sight. I moved slowly through the room, letting the gift anchor my hands, resisting the urge to turn around. Eyes followed me, some with confusion, some with curiosity, others with that vague discomfort people wear when something unexpected pierces their perfect gathering. Daniel saw me and blinked twice, like convincing himself I wasn't a vision. "Mom," he said carefully, stepping toward me. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said before he could speak, "but I need 5 minutes, that's all." His eyes flicked toward the kitchen. "Emily's not going to—" "I know. Then maybe—" "Daniel." I lowered my voice. "Please." He looked down, then gave a small nod. 5 minutes. By the time he gathered the room, Emily had appeared at the top of the stairs, baby monitor in hand, eyes narrowed. She moved with practiced calm, but her grip on the railing gave her away. "What's this?" she asked from halfway down. "I brought something," I said. "Something you were meant to receive weeks ago." Her mouth tightened. "Now isn't the time. Now is the only time." I stepped forward and opened the journal slowly, no longer a gift, but something else, part memory, part testimony. "I wrote this for you," I said, my voice steady, "not out of guilt or pride, but because I thought you might want to know who your child came from." I flipped to a page near the back, Frank's handwriting. I cleared my throat. "Family doesn't exile the ones who raised you. It doesn't rewrite history when things get uncomfortable, and it doesn't hand over its heart and then pretend it never beat there." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. The music had stopped. Emily descended a step, then another. "You're reading his letter?" she snapped. "That's manipulation." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned to another page, Emily's own handwriting from 4 years ago. I read aloud. "You made me believe I was lovable, that I was enough to belong to something, that I didn't have to perform for love." A silence followed that line so complete I could hear someone's ice melt in a nearby glass. Emily's face flushed. That was private. I thought so too, until my words stopped being mine. Daniel stepped forward, uncertain. "What does that mean?" I held the journal closer to my chest. "You asked if I tried to control her, if I threatened her. I didn't. But she accessed my journals, Daniel, my private letters. She altered them, used them." Emily's breath caught. "That's not true." "She edited my words," I said. "She rewrote what I wrote in grief, in hope, in love. She planted them back in my life like mines." Daniel looked between us. "Emily, did you read her files? Her journals?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "Did you edit them?" I was scared," she said quickly. "You don't know what it's like being a new mother, feeling judged." Daniel's voice sharpened. "That's not what I asked." She swallowed. "I might have looked at them, but only because I needed to know what she really thought of me." "You could have asked," he said, barely above a whisper. Harriet stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. "She trusted you, Emily, enough to give you the quietest parts of herself, and you turned them into a weapon." The room buzzed with tension. Some guests looked away. Others stared like a courtroom jury waiting for the gavel. I closed the journal. "You're his wife," I said quietly, "and I'm his mother. Only one of us ever held him before he had a name." Emily turned away, blinking fast, lips pressed so tightly they disappeared. I handed the journal to Daniel. "Read it," I said, "all of it, then decide who I am." I didn't stay. I walked out the way I came in, past murmurs and softened jazz, But before I reached the front door, I heard something, a rustle, a footstep, and then the faintest gasp from someone reading a truth they didn't want but couldn't deny. Maybe love alone doesn't protect you. But the truth, once heard, it doesn't unring. She tried to erase me, but I remembered everything. And now, so does he. The house was quiet in that way only late night can bring. Not the kind of quiet that comes from peace, but the heavy, suspended hush that settles after something breaks. The walls themselves seemed to hold their breath. I sat in the front room, hands folded, eyes fixed on the framed photo across the room. Frank holding Daniel as a baby, both of them smiling, their faces too similar to ignore. That photo had lived in my hallway for decades. Now it sat on Daniel's sideboard, as if it knew it was needed. Upstairs, I heard soft footsteps, then stillness. When Daniel came down, his face was pale but steady. He held his phone in one hand and motioned for me to sit beside him. I moved slowly, as if the moment might vanish if I made a sound. "I spoke to Thomas again," he said, voice low. "He walked me through everything. The PDFs, the timestamps. The metadata all ties back to Emily's MacBook. There's no doubt anymore." I exhaled, not in relief, but in release. Daniel rubbed his hands over his face. "She used your words like kindling, built a fire around herself, and then blamed you for the smoke." "I never wanted her hurt," I said quietly. "I only wanted to belong." He nodded. "I know that now." There was a beat of silence, then the creak of the stairs. Emily appeared, barefoot, arms folded, her expression unreadable. "You're really going to believe this?" she asked, her voice trembling, not with sadness, but with fury restrained just enough to keep it civil. Daniel stood. "Emily, Thomas found the files. There's no mistake." She scoffed. "So I'm the villain now, because I tried to protect our family from being manipulated?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "Number, you were protecting yourself from her memory." Emily's mouth opened, then closed. "She was here before you," he continued, "and she'll be here long after this mess clears. She's not perfect, but she's real, and you made her a ghost in her own family." Emily stepped back. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to leave, for a while." Her jaw clenched. "This is my home." Daniel nodded. "It still is, but tonight I need space, and Mom needs a place in her grandson's life that doesn't come with suspicion or apology." Emily's silence this time was different. It wasn't shock or defiance. It was defeat. She turned and walked upstairs without another word. We sat for a long while after she was gone, the kind of silence where emotions settle like dust, slow and inevitable. Then Daniel rose and disappeared down the hallway. A moment later, he returned with a bundle in his arms. "Meet your grandma," he said softly, placing the baby in my arms. "She's not going anywhere." The baby stirred gently, face pink and peaceful, mouth puckering as if dreaming of milk or lullabies. My arms, long emptied of this weight, remembered what to do. I held him like I'd held his father. The circle that had been broken, closed again, not neatly, but enough. I blinked hard, but the tears came anyway. Daniel sat beside me, one arm around my shoulder. "She wanted me gone that night," I whispered. "But tonight, I'm staying." He rested his head lightly against mine. "You were never gone, Mom. I just forgot how much you were always here." In the end, I didn't need revenge. I only needed to be remembered for who I truly was. As Daniel placed my grandson in my arms and the house finally exhaled its silence, I felt something settle deep inside me. Recognition. Not just from others, but from myself. No one has the right to make you invisible. When you speak your truth, even after the damage is done, love still has a way of finding its way home. If you've ever been pushed aside, doubted, or forgotten in your own family, share your story. Let's remind each other that we're still here and we still matter.